Today we will be recreating a really cool effect by carrying contour, something that I call scale not to fit. So we're going to start by creating an 8 by 10 document here. You'll be seeing it set up. It's going to be set up in landscape mode. Here you go, 10 inches wide by 8 inches high, and it's going to be at a resolution of 150 pixels per inch. So we're going to create it here. And our next step is going to be to put in our background image. You'll see that it's a little smaller than we want it to be, so what we're going to do is we're going to scale it up using the transform tools. And we don't want to see those birds in there, so you're going to see me scale it up to get those out of there and then set it up so we have a little bit of the water showing and a little bit of the sky showing at the top. This is going to come in handy later for when we're placing all of our objects around this cityscape canvas. And just so you guys know, all the images that I use in this tutorial can be found at unsplash.com. So next we're going to be editing and cutting out some of the flowers that are going to go on this scale not to fit landscape. So we're going to cut out this rose first. You'll see I'm using the pen tool to go all the way around the rose petals. It doesn't have to be exact necessarily, but just go all the way around it. Pen tool is probably the best way to do this. After that, you'll meet the lineup and you're going to press the selection, and we're going to feather this 2 pixels to make it look a little more realistic. Then you're going to press Command J to get it on a new layer, and you'll see that when we turn off that background layer, all we have left is the rose, which is what we want. So we're going to drag that onto our background layer and just kind of leave it there for now. We are going to cut out a couple more flowers. I've already cut these ones out using the pen tool, so we'll just drag those onto there using the same process that was used for the rose just now. So we got our little bubble flower going there, and then we're going to get one more rose that has a stem on it to go by it. See that? Drop it right in, and we're going to drag that down a little closer where we want it. Next, we're going to start putting in the fish, and so we'll drag one of our fish pictures into Photoshop. You'll see it already has a black background, which makes for a really nice and easy cutout. We're going to use the magic wand tool to select the black background. Then pressing Command Shift I, that's going to invert the selection so that we can take the selector tool, quick select tool, and select all of that beta's body. Now we're just going to go around the edges, make sure that they're looking clean and none of that black background is selected. Next, go to the Select tab at the top, go down to Modify, and then we're going to go to Contract. And we're going to contract this 2 pixels. This way it ensures a little better that none of that black background is going to be there. You'll see I pressed the Add Mask button, and we're dragging it into our canvas. Now it drags in really large, and so we're going to go Command T and then scale this down so that it fits a little better within our canvas. Perfect, and just repeating the same process with the other fish here. Same process of selecting that black background, contracting, and then dragging it into the canvas layer. And we want to make sure that we name all of our layers too, so it is a lot easier to work with them. You'll see now I'm just placing everything kind of where I want it, transforming it and rotating to match up with where I want. Now this bluefish, what we're going to do is we're going to right click and press flip horizontal because we want it to be facing the other way, so it's kind of facing into the center of the frame. Now we're going to keep adjusting all the other fish, place them kind of so that they're turning around the buildings if they're turning. Next, we're going to right click on our layer masks and click apply layer mask. This way we'll be able to add more layer masks, such as right now with our red fish. We're going to pick the soft round brush and we're going to make it look like it is kind of coming out of the water by masking out most of the body. Next, we're going to go on to the Bluefish, and to mask this out, we're going to start by pen tool selecting the building that the fish is going to be coming around. So you'll see me selecting it with the pen tool here, going all the way to the end of the canvas, and then pressing that selection tool. We don't want to feather this selection, so we'll do 0 pixels. Then we are going to turn the visibility back on, press Command-Shift-I, and press our mask button. This is going to mask out the body right away. And the fish isn't really where I want, so we're going to unlink that layer mask, click on our fish, and we're able to drag it around. Just remember, when you're done getting it positioned the way you want it to, press that link button again. Next, we're going to do the same with that goldfish, pen tooling the building, pressing Command-Shift-I, and then rotating it around, unlinking the layer mask to do all that, and clicking on my goldfish. Then we got it where we want it. So the next step is to make the fin look like it's coming around the building. So now what we're going to do is click on our layer mask and use our brush tool to do this. So we're going to have it on the white to get our goldfish back into our image. And we want a little bit of that body sticking around the building too. So we're going to zoom in and do the same brush to the body. You see I got a little too much, so I'm just selecting that right out. And then it goes the same for this other big fish here. This one's a little more tedious process with the pen tool, and we're cutting out some of those cables just because they're a little tedious and no one is ever going to know that those cables were ever in the photo when they look at our final image. So I'm done with that. Press the selection tool, and we're doing the same process again. Our next challenge is going to be getting this fish to look like it's being wrapped around the building. To do this, we're going to right click on our layer mask and disable it. Now we're going to go in and pen tool select the fin and that large gill looking thing coming out. The fin's a little hard to see where it starts and ends, so we're just kind of zigzagging it in and out, and then going along the rest of that gill with our pen tool. Then we're going to make a selection, and then we're going to use the brush tool to fill that in while on our layer mask. The next thing you're going to see me do is go in, add a layer mask to our flowers, and use our brush tool to mask out the parts of the flowers we don't want. All the while I am Command T and then scaling the flowers to make sure that they are the size that I want them. And you'll see that I'm kind of matching up with the trees to make it look like the flowers are almost growing out of the trees. Now that we have our masking done, it's now on to the details that are going to make this look more realistic. So first we're going to press new layer. This is going to be a shadow layer under our rose. So we're going to zoom into the rose here, and we're using a black brush and it's going to be a soft brush, to go under this flower, kind of around it, paying attention to where the realistic shadows would be. Now we're going to use this soft light blend mode and tone down our opacity to somewhere around 45 to 50%. We're going to repeat this process, adding a new layer, shadow layer, under our flowers for each and every one, doing the soft light blend mode and then toning down the opacity. And the key here is to use subtle shadows. We're going to do the same for this blue fish, paying attention to the fact that if this was in real life, it would probably have a big shadow along the trees and the building, along with right under it as well. So we want to make this look as realistic as possible, even though fish are probably not going to be swimming the city anytime soon. The same is repeated then for the goldfish, going below it on the tree line and toning down that opacity to around 50%. You can see when we turn it on and off what a difference it makes. It doesn't look like it would be that big of a difference, but turning it on and off, you can really see what kind of difference it makes. Then for this fish too, we want to make sure it has a shadow on the building, and then the next thing we're going to do after that is putting the shadow from the building onto the tail of the fish. Want to get all those little details in there. Tone down the opacity of that. The next thing we're going to do is click on our fish layer and press Command J to copy it. And this is going to be where we start doing the reflection of our fish. Take that copied layer, set the blend mode to overlay, and place it below our fish. I'm using my arrow keys to nudge it to the side and down a little bit. And then we are going to use our brush tool to mask out all parts except for the fin and gill, because those are the only parts we want reflected. Then we're Command T transforming again to scale it out and then scale it down to make the reflection a little wider. And now I'm using a soft brush on my layer mask to kind of soften the edges of the reflection to make it blend in more with the building and create that realistic subtlety. Make sure throughout this process that you are saving your file. Name it something you're going to remember, like Scale Not to Fit, because that's the name of the effect that we're doing this time. Make sure you're saving it throughout this process as well. Next, we are going to try to match the color of the stem on the flower to the color of the tree. So we're going to do a hue and saturation layer. We're going to create a clipping mask by clicking that rectangle with an arrow and then dragging our saturation down, because the trees look pretty desaturated. And it's not completely matched yet, so we're going to do another adjustment layer, this time a color balance one, clicking that rectangle with the arrow again, because you'll see that we need that clipping mask. And then I'm just taking a little bit of the green out and adding some blue to get the greens to match a little better. Now we're going to Command click both of those, Command J to copy them, and then we're going to move it to be on top of all of our other flower layers. And you'll see that it releases that clipping mask, so we're going to have to right click and do Create Clipping Mask again, and it's going to clip to each of those flowers. Dragging it down to that rose again, Create Clipping Mask, and we're good to go. Our last step is just to then make this a little more of a cohesive image, so we're going to add a photo filter on top of the entire image. And for me, I chose the cooling filter, but you can choose whatever filter you like. And then we're going to close that and set our opacity of that to about 65% is what I ended up setting it at, just because I didn't want it to be too intense, but I still wanted it to feel like we had a little bit of a color balance among everything. And so you'll see I turn this off to see what it looked like before, and then turn it back on, and I get a little more of the look that I wanted. So now that is our Scale Not to Fit project. Congratulations for making it to the end of this video, and happy photoshopping!